My name is Hannah Reyes. I'm a captain in the military, though most people in my life don't really know what that means. To them, I'm the one who sends emails, makes spreadsheets, and keeps coffee warm for someone more important. I live in a small apartment downtown. It's nothing fancy. One chair, a worn-out rug, and a view of a brick wall that never changes. I like it quiet. I like knowing exactly where everything is and not having to explain myself to anyone. My younger sister, Ava, lives in a glass condo that reflects the skyline like it's part of the view. She's the kind of person who was born to be noticed. Big voice, big laugh, always camera ready. She says, content, like it's a currency, and I guess for her it is. Growing up, she was the light in every room. People used to say she had a future on TV. I was the kid who colored inside the lines and didn't raise her hand unless she was sure of the answer. No one really noticed when I slipped out of the spotlight. Honestly, I never wanted it. But somewhere along the way, that silence turned into something else. People started assuming it meant I had less to say, that I had less going on. And I never corrected them. It's easier that way. Let them think I'm boring. Let them think I never aimed high. My parents don't mean to compare us, but the math is simple. Ava shows up in magazine spreads. I show up alone, in uniform, with stories I can't tell. They ask how work is. I say it's steady. They nod like that. Explains everything. Like, stability is all I've managed to scrape together, while Ava builds an empire on selfies and sponsored posts. I'm not bitter. At least, I don't think I am. I've made peace with the fact that most people don't see me. But some nights, when the city outside my window hums louder than usual, I wonder what it would feel like to be understood, to be seen for what I really do. The truth is, I don't need anyone's approval, but it'd be nice if someone just once looked past the surface and realized there's more to me than muted colors and clean corners. They think I settled, that I chose small because I couldn't handle big. But I chose this life. I chose the silence, the order, the solitude. Not because I'm weak, but because I know exactly who I am in it. Still, there's something about being the sibling no one talks about. Like your story's already been written, and no one bothered to check if the ink had dried. I'm not the star. I'm not the favorite. I'm just Hannah. And maybe that's been the point all along. Ava's life looks like a curated magazine spread. Perfect lighting, designer bags, beachside brunches. Her face is on billboards now, somewhere between luxury skincare and a podcast about confidence. She says she built her brand from scratch, and maybe she did. But the truth is, some people are just born with gravity. The world orbits around them, without ever being asked to. She started with makeup tutorials in high school. Then came the partnerships, the team, the press kits. Now she flies to Milan for shows and gets invited to parties I've only ever seen in photos. When she talks, people lean in. She has that thing where every story sounds just a little bit better coming from her. And when she walks into a room, she doesn't just enter it. She owns it. Our parents eat it up. My mom keeps a scrapbook of Ava's magazine covers. She once framed a PR package because the packaging looked expensive. My dad told me once he didn't understand social media, but he understood success when he saw it. They don't mean to compare us. Not out loud. But it happens in little ways. Like when they ask me if I've thought about getting a more public-facing role. Or when they remind me that I'm still young enough to go back to school. Just in case. Once, at Thanksgiving, my dad introduced me to a family friend as the quiet one in uniform. Then he turned to Ava and said, "She's the one you've probably seen on TV." That sentence has lived rent-free in my head ever since. Sometimes I wonder if they even realize how much it stings. That being invisible around your own dinner table doesn't take some dramatic betrayal. It just takes a few years of being asked surface-level questions and getting polite nods in return. Ava once asked me if I ever got bored with my job. I told her it keeps me busy. She laughed and said, "Yeah, I guess someone has to do the background stuff." She didn't mean it cruelly. But that's the thing. It still landed that way. They've built this image of me that's tidy, harmless, manageable, like I'm a side character in a story I didn't write. One time, my mom said she's proud of me for keeping things steady. I wanted to ask if that was code for forgettable, but I didn't. The hardest part isn't the spotlight being elsewhere. It's that no one even thinks I might deserve one. That they can't imagine a world where my job holds weight because it doesn't show up on their feeds or come with applause. I've watched Ava do interviews where she talks about hard work and hustle, and I don't doubt she's worked for what she has. But there's a different kind of hustle that doesn't come with brand deals or clapping audiences. The kind that happens in silence, under pressure, when no one is watching. They don't see that part, and maybe they never will. Because in this family, spotlight equals success. And silence? Well, silence just looks like settling. The restaurant was warm and too bright, filled with the clink of forks and fake laughter. Mom was glowing as the waiter brought out a slice of birthday cake with a single gold candle. I smiled from my usual spot at the far end of the table, the place where no one ever tried to listen too closely. Ava was already 2 glasses in. Her laugh had that sharp, attention-hungry tone that always came out after wine. She leaned back in her seat, eyes sweeping the table, like she was waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Then it came. She looked straight at me and asked if I was still living in that survival bunker. Said it like a joke, but her voice didn't sound playful. She tilted her head and added, "What's the square footage again? 400? Must feel like a storage unit." The table chuckled. Even Mom tried to hide a smile behind her napkin. Dad just looked down and buttered a roll like nothing had happened. I felt my face get hot. Not blushing, not embarrassed, just burning. I didn't move. I stared at my plate and counted the folds in the cloth napkin. Anything to keep my eyes down. Ava wasn't finished. She leaned forward, her gold bracelet tapping the table like a drumbeat. "You know," she said, "I passed by your place last week. It looked like one of those buildings from a war movie. I thought it had been condemned." No one stopped her. Not really. My mom gave her a nudge and whispered her name. But it was too soft. Too late. She laughed again. "I don't even know how you sleep there. Doesn't it echo? Or do you just get used to the sound of your own silence?" That one got a real laugh from someone. I couldn't tell who. I didn't want to look up. My chest felt tight. My fork was still in my hand, but I hadn't touched my food in 20 minutes. The candle on the cake flickered, and all I could think about was how long it would take to melt completely. Then came the final cut. "Maybe that's the point," she said. "Maybe you like it quiet, because you don't have to explain why you haven't done more. Maybe staying small makes it easier not to fail." I didn't say a word. Not because I couldn't, but because I knew it wouldn't matter. Nothing I said could compete with the story they'd already decided was true. Dad cleared his throat and changed the subject. Mom started slicing the cake. Everyone acted like it never happened. But the burn in my chest didn't go away. I smiled because I've learned how to smile on command. But inside, I was shrinking. Not from shame, but from the weight of being invisible in a room full of people who thought they knew me. I kept quiet. Not because I was weak, but because if I opened my mouth, I wasn't sure what would come out. Maybe a scream, maybe nothing. And somehow, nothing felt worse. I didn't cry in the car on the way home. I didn't throw anything or replay the insults out loud. I just walked into my apartment, locked the door, and stood in the quiet until my breath slowed. The walls didn't judge me. The silence didn't press in. It held me, steady and familiar, like armor I'd worn too long to take off now. I placed my keys on the counter, lined up the laces of my boots, and opened the cabinet under the sink. Inside was a locked case, slim and gray. My fingers moved without hesitation, entering the code I knew by heart. The click of the latch felt like an exhale. Inside were documents, encrypted drives, and a backup comms unit. Everything exactly where it should be. I wasn't expecting a mission that night, but I knew one would come. People like Ava think peace is something you post about. something with filters and soft lighting. But real peace, the kind I guard, lives in places you don't see. The kind of places where one mistake means someone doesn't make it home. That dinner didn't break me. It reminded me who I was. Not the sister who stayed quiet. Not the one who settled. I'm the one who prepares. The one who waits with eyes open, even when no one's watching. They think silence means small. But silence is where I hear the clearest. And when the call comes, I move. Always. It was just after 9 when Ava showed up at my door. She was dressed in something expensive. Hair perfect. And eyes already scanning my apartment like it was a crime scene. I didn't say much. Just let her in and watch her take inventory of everything she thought was beneath her. She commented on the couch. Something about how it looked like I picked it out of a clearance bin. I nodded and walked past her, the air between us tighter than usual. She wandered into the kitchen, opened my fridge without asking, and pulled out a bottle of water. Her voice followed me from the other room. Something about how this place looked more like a shelter than a home. Then my phone buzzed. Not the regular phone, the secure one. A deep, low vibration that didn't stop after one pulse. I turned toward it, and everything else faded. Ava was still talking, but I didn't hear her. My focus shifted to the code blinking across the screen. One phrase. Red-coded. Immediate response. I moved without a word, pulled the case from beneath the couch. Keyed in the code. Ava froze mid-sentence, watching me with a confused frown. She asked what I was doing, but I didn't answer. There wasn't time. 3 knocks on the door. Not polite. Sharp and loud, like urgency had hands. I opened it before the last knock landed. 3 men stood there in uniform, eyes scanning, hands steady. One handed me a sealed folder. Another placed a badge reader in my hand. The last gave a quiet nod, and then they were gone. Ava stood by the wall now, still holding her water. Her face pale. I didn't look at her. I didn't need to. The room had shifted. The apartment was no longer just mine. It was a forward operating post. I scanned my badge, unlocked the folder, and laid out the mission maps on the table. The grid references were precise. The timestamps are urgent. I slid into the chair like I'd done it 1,000 times. Because I had. My headset clicked on. The line buzzed, then cleared. I issued a sitrep. Short, controlled. I began coordinating with field agents in a conflict zone Ava had probably never heard of. Behind me, she didn't move. I could feel her eyes trying to catch up to what she was seeing. But this world wasn't built for catching up. It was built for command. I called for satellite support, redirected air assets, and gave confirmation codes for extraction routes. Each word was clean. Each instruction, exact. No wasted breath. No room for doubt. A voice came through the line. Clipped. Urgent. Requesting final clearance from Night Vulture. That's me. I confirmed and gave the go code. The field captain replied, Copy that, Vulture. Moving. Ava flinched. The silence that followed wasn't peaceful. It was loaded. The weight of realization hung between us. She finally understood. Not everything, but enough. I kept working. She didn't speak. And for the first time in our lives, she wasn't the loudest person in the room. The mission ended with confirmation from all units. No casualties. Target secured. I logged out, powered down the system, and closed the folder with a quiet click. The room went still. Not just quiet. Still. Ava hadn't moved. She was standing where I left her, eyes wide, mouth slightly open, like she wanted to speak, but didn't know how. I didn't say anything. I didn't explain. There was nothing to prove. I picked up the folder and slid it back into the case, locked it, returned it to its place beneath the couch. Everything clean, everything precise, just like always. Ava's gaze followed me, but she wasn't looking at the room anymore. She was looking at me, really looking, like she was seeing a stranger wearing her sister's face. Her voice didn't come. And for once, I didn't fill the silence. I just sat down, back in that same chair she called pathetic an hour earlier. Same apartment, same woman, different story now. She opened her mouth once, then closed it again. No sarcasm, no smile, just awe. And something else that looked like regret. That was the moment. She saw me. Not the version she made up. Not the quiet background. But me. And I didn't need her apology. I didn't need the words. The silence between us said more than anything she could have come up with. I let her stand there. Let her feel the weight of what she didn't know. And I didn't gloat. I just breathed, calm and steady. Because finally, without saying a word, I had told my story. People always assumed my silence meant I had nothing to say, that I was just quiet because I lacked opinions or didn't know how to speak up. But the truth is, silence was something I trained for. It started in childhood, being overlooked at dinner while Ava told her stories. I learned to sit still, to listen, to hold my reactions. Over time, I realized those skills had value in places louder voices couldn't reach. In the military, silence isn't weakness. It's clarity. It's knowing when to wait, when to move, and when to act, without hesitation. The things that used to feel like failures being the quiet one, the forgotten one, they built my discipline. They made me sharp. They taught me how to lead, without ever needing to be seen. When things fall apart, I don't. That's not an accident. That's years of learning how to hold steady when no one else does. Silence gave me focus. It gave me control in chaos. And it made me the kind of person you want on the other end of the line when everything's at stake. They still don't understand it. They probably never will. But that's the thing about strength. It doesn't need validation. Ava saw it that night. For a moment, at least. And maybe that's enough. Maybe being understood just once is all I ever needed. But even if it wasn't, I'd still choose this life. The quiet, the discipline, the peace that comes from knowing exactly who you are. The next morning, I opened my personal laptop. The inbox was quiet, except for one unread message. The subject line was just my name. Hannah. No punctuation, no explanation. I stared at it for a while. Not curious, just still. I already knew what it said, or at least what it was trying to say. A version of sorry. A version of I didn't know. Maybe even a version of thank you, though she'd never say it that directly. I hovered over it for a second, then dragged it to the archive. Not out of anger. Not out of pride. Just peace. I didn't need her to spell it out. She saw me, that was enough. And I had work to do. A mission brief was already waiting. The name on the folder belonged to someone who needed me, not someone who questioned me. As I opened the file, I felt something loosen. Not heavy, just light. Like I had finally stepped out of someone else's shadow and into my own space. The silence in the room felt different now. Not empty, not lonely, just mine. The hum of the command room was soft, almost comforting. Screens glowed in the dim light, maps shifting, updates rolling in. I moved between stations like I belonged there, because I did. No one clapped when I entered. No one handed me medals or made speeches. But when the tough calls came in, they looked to me. Not because I'm loud, not because I demand attention, but because when everything is on the line, I don't flinch. This room doesn't care about likes or follower counts. It cares about clarity, precision, action, and I give it all of that without hesitation. I never needed them to understand what I do. Their version of success looks different, shinier, louder, but what they don't know is what keeps them safe. Every mission I lead, every quiet decision I make, builds something that lasts longer than applause. It builds peace. They may never post about me, they may never fully see me, but I know who I am. Ava got a glimpse. That night changed something. Not between us, maybe, but inside her. And that was enough. The folder in front of me had a new name, a new life, a new moment that needed holding together by someone who didn't need the spotlight. So I leaned forward, focused in, ready. Because real strength doesn't ask to be seen, it just shows up.